here. And TJ, you ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it, Rockapella.
All right, Barbara, you good? You ready to rock and roll?
Rockapella.
Ready to rock and roll.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We are streaming live to Activate NM's YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Super excited about today's session. I have the pleasure of introducing our facilitator today, TJ Cook, Executive Director of ABQID. TJ, thanks you so much for hosting us. He's going to intro us off with the presenters about the topic and the topic today. And I just wanted to let you know that this is part one of kind of a two-part series. We'll be having a follow-up session in December on December 10th, and that will be our final session for the year. And so super excited to collaborate on a whole new series for the new year. I see Mr. Ken Jackson in the audience, and we're working on a session for the January series. So stay tuned to that. So part one, let's get it going. TJ, thanks for facilitating.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Startup Retool Series, edition number whatever it is in the year 2020. Actually, if you, Dan didn't mention it, but he should mention that these are recorded and you can access a bunch of really great conversations, presentations from a variety of world-class thinkers and doers in the entrepreneurial world on the Activate NM YouTube channel. I am happy to introduce our two guests, but a little bit about C&M Ingenuity and ABQID Fund, for which I serve as fund manager. We serve the entrepreneurial community in New Mexico, Somos Unidos, and what we do is we make seed investments in early stage companies that have really high growth potential and that we see can be leaders of emerging industries in for New Mexico. This isn't about the fund per se, but just so you know, I'm here to help entrepreneurs think about funding, especially venture, the good, the bad, the ugly. And we specifically want to be a really community forward venture fund for New Mexico. Lastly, I'll mention C&M Ingenuity does a variety of cool, awesome stuff, from deep dive coding boot camps to Activate New Mexico to another program called Hyperspace Challenge. So if you want to know and learn about C&M Ingenuity, it's cnmingenuity.org. You can go anytime. Today's topic, I think, is really important. How to build a business that you will be able to sell. How to build a business you'll be able to sell. When I first got involved in a business that a buddy of mine had started, I did not think about this question. I did not think about building something to sell. I thought about, this is cool. And then I started doing projects, right? Which is often how it starts. So if you're on the call today and you can take in what our awesome presenter, Barbara Klein, is about to discuss, it can make a world of difference for you personally, but also from a business success standpoint. So I think it's very timely. I think going into 2021 for New Mexico and for each of you personally, having that growth mindset, and I think this is a growth mindset presentation, thinking big about what you're doing in your business is just critical. We need more entrepreneurs than ever before. We need to build the next class, if you will, of startups in New Mexico that can do things that have not been done before. I think, and we think, entrepreneurs lead the way in economic development. So happy to be hosting this conversation. And now a little bit about our speakers before I hand it off to you, Barbara. Barbara Klein has years of experience in this domain. She is an expert certified business broker that helps numerous people sell or buy businesses. She's also a commercial real estate associate broker and helps people on retirement strategies as well. All of which kind of converge in the work that she does. She's a serial entrepreneur for many years prior to getting her certification as a business broker. And she has founded numerous companies herself. Breakthrough Communications, which was a public relations firm specializing in promoting technology and technology companies. a day spa, an event center, and a publishing company. So if you want to learn from somebody who's been there and done that, that's Barbara as well. She's worked internationally as well, spending 3 years in Brussels with Intel, 1 year as VP of Global Marketing for a Dutch software company. So I feel honored and privileged to have Barbara with us. And just a note before I hand it over to you, Barbara, we also have, in these series, we also always want to take the opportunity to highlight other organizations in the community that are helping entrepreneurs. So you'll be able to get to hear from Josue Olivares with the SVEDC, the South Valley Economic Development Center, which is doing amazing work. And I esteem Josue highly as a friend and as a colleague in the community as well. So once we hear from Barbara, we get, it's like icing on the cake or the cherry on the sundae hearing from Josue. So that being said, such an important topic, amazing speaker. Barbara, I hand it over to you.
Thank you, TJ. It's good to see everybody today. I have a little presentation that I'm going to put up on the screen that we can kind of walk through. I think one of my passions, and it has been for a long time, is, as TJ said, I've been in the business development spectrum all the way from helping startups get started and funded to now helping mature, established businesses sell. And it's my passion to help every entrepreneur be the success that they can be. So let me get this up. Okay. So the point of this discussion is something I've been a fan of Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth, ever since he wrote the E-Myth. He was just a few miles up the street from me in Northern California, and he had such a brilliant revelation for me that there is a big difference between starting a company to pursue your passion and developing a company that's going to contribute to the community and build and grow and then enable you to really reach a successful conclusion when you're ready to exit and move on to something else. And so the way he defines it and the way I define it is most people start by creating a job. They have a passion. They have something that they want to do in their lives. They have something that they feel that they're really strongly capable of doing. They have something that they love doing. And so they build a business around it. But a lot of them stop there rather than looking at what the opportunities are to actually grow and develop that business into something that's going to provide jobs in the community. And like I say, a really positive return on investment. So you've already heard about me from TJ. I'm not going to spend any time at all on this slide, but I wanted to talk about, and this is where I'm focused now, is on purchasing a business. And it has relevance to those of you who are considering it as well, just simply because it provides a foundation to start talking about. If you are in startup mode, you probably already know that it's expensive and risky and that the products and services are unproven and that there's a very high failure rate to this. Doesn't mean you can't keep on trying. As a matter of fact, when I was in Silicon Valley, all of the venture capitalists that I talked to really had more respect for somebody who had tried and failed. They were more willing to invest in them than in somebody who was brand new, just simply because they knew that they had had a little bit more time in the trenches to really figure out what to do with their company. But down the road, if you have established a company, you are going to want somebody like me to help you find somebody who wants to buy that company. And the reasons why are because you've had a record of success, you have processes and procedures in place so that somebody can walk in and doesn't have to develop things from the ground up. You already have an established customer base, vendor relationships. The buyer is going to know that you're invested in his success or her success. And there is an immediate cash flow, which is something we can talk about later, because that really is a critical thing. So the fact is that about 500,000 businesses change hands every year. As you start the process of developing a business, whether you're looking for, a venture-funded business and looking down the line either to sell shares or to sell to a larger company, or whether you're a small business, a mom and pop shop, or starting out as a mom and pop shop, and are simply looking to find a replacement for what you're doing, it's important for you to know what an investor is going to be looking for. And that investor is everywhere from venture capital to the next owner of your business. It's not easy to sell a business. If you're on the stock market, for example, you have some method of figuring out what the value of your business is. But if you are like most businesses where it's virtually impossible to create a direct comparison, it's going to be much more difficult to really figure out what that value is. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is how you establish that value. What pieces you put in place to make it easy for somebody to establish that value. And this is a critical point that I want you to bear in mind as we move forward. So I have 3 golden rules for creating a successful, saleable business. And by the way, this is my idea of success. One of these days, I'm going to be out on a beach someplace like that, watching the waves roll in, and very proud of everything that I have done, which has now provided the income to go sit on that beach. The first thing is you want to balance short-term income goals with long-term investment objectives. And we'll talk more about this. As a business owner, you typically have a lot invested emotionally in the business. It's very rare that you have a business owner who is like totally abstracted from the business. But when you talk about investors, when you talk about somebody that's going to come in and buy it, about 99% of the time, it's going to be the financials that are going to be the basis of the conversation and are going to help determine the price. There are a lot of things, a lot of choices that can be made along the way, which will balance shorter term income goals against the longer term investment objectives. And it's knowing these decisions along the line. If you're going to sell a business, or if you're positioning to sell a business, you want to start about 3 years. You need to start at least 3 years in advance to have the numbers together and all of the pieces together that are going to make it attractive for sale. But if you start a business or change a business as of today, to really think about what those long-term investment objectives are, it's going to make a difference in some of the decisions that you make today. And I think it's actually going to help your business be better in the short term as well as in the long term, or stronger. Let me say stronger. The other thing is you want to market for growth. If you have created a job for yourself, you may be very happy to leave it at a size that is generating a comfortable income for yourself. But you aren't building up the capital that you can exchange later for your retirement income or the money to invest in a new business if you aren't paying attention to a growth strategy. If you aren't looking at those opportunities that you have to build the company, to add more people to it, and to constantly refine the business. And the last thing, which is very hard, is you've got to make yourself dispensable. Nobody at the table when you're getting ready to sell a company is going to want to hear that the company, you are the salesperson, you are the president, you are the VP of manufacturing, and everything that has ever been a success in the company is because of you. And believe me, I've had clients do that. It makes it very difficult to sell. Making yourself dispensable is also wonderful because it's going to allow you to take vacations along the route. And if you've been in business very long, you know how difficult that is if you don't have a strong team in place. So the first thing I'm going to get back into is finances. And the good news and the bad news about QuickBooks is that everybody can be an accountant. Not. You can put together some of the basic financials, and you know, I do this myself on some side businesses that I have. I can keep track of what's going on. These are not businesses that I'm building to sell. These are little things that I'm pursuing because they're fun. But if I am building a business to sell, you want to make sure that whoever is doing the accounting knows what they're doing. You should at least have an accountant come in monthly and check on what's going on. Make sure that your books are being kept properly so that at the end of the year, you're in a good position to actually know what you're doing. There's a thing called the balance sheet that most small businesses ignore. It's critical not only for the person who is buying the business to get a snapshot of how the business is doing, but it's also critical for you because it's going to tell you how much money is going to be left after you sell that business. And believe me, you aren't going to get that just from the income statement. So this is something that you want to invest in. Trust me on this. A lot of people say, "Oh no, you know, I'll have my spouse or my sister or my high school, you know, aged kid do it." No, make sure you've got some expert advice along the line. As you grow, you also want to consider things like insurance to ensure continuity. There are insurances packages out there that give you the money to readjust if one of your key people passes or is otherwise incapacitated. It's called key man insurance. It should be called key person insurance, but that's another topic. But it's something that you want to look at because, again, you know, this business, if it's going to provide value beyond a job for you until you're ready to quit, you need to be able to protect it against things that could happen that could interrupt it. You also want to establish systems. And this was something, it took me a few companies to understand the need to establish systems because some of my early companies were very creative. And I figured, well, how can you systematize creativity? Well, over the last 15, 20, 30 years, people have been working a lot more at that. But it's getting that information in place so that when somebody comes in, they aren't reinventing the wheel. They actually can see how a certain job is done, how the pieces of the company put together, how culture works. You know, Intel is a big employer in this community. It was, you know, one of the first places that I worked. And I worked there early enough that I was there watching as Intel was working on developing its culture. And it was a fascinating experience. I didn't totally understand why it was important, but I knew we had spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking about it. But what it did was create something, you know, these days and age, a company that's been around for 50 years is pretty amazing. And, you know, to this day, if I meet somebody from Intel, we're immediately fast friends. We know what we're talking, how we're talking to each other. We've got the same vocabulary. And it's amazing. It's something that makes a company very strong. You also want to have contracts in place. Again, it's a tendency in a lot of businesses to say, well, sales come in, they go, I work with vendors, this, that, and the other. But it says contracts that you can put into place that demonstrate stability, which is, again, going to be important in terms of somebody walking in and looking at the business. Are there going to be customers that continue? One of the things that I mentioned early on was, you buy a business because you're expecting to have cash flow from day one. This is one way of demonstrating that there is going to be continuing business if you can show that you have expected future business and you have strong vendors who are in place. And like I say, absolutely critical to become dispensable. Another area that a lot of small businesses have to consider is real estate. And there's always the question to buy or to lease. And I've got some questions up here that I think you want to really consider when you're asking that question. How long are you going to be in a space? Are you planning to grow to the point where you're going to outgrow it? Do you have the money that you can invest in the property? And do you want to build equity? I think it really is, there are many different arguments about this. There's no right answer. But I will tell you that when you're selling a business, for a lot of businesses, the ability to fund the sale, for the investor or the investor, the new owner operator to come in, it's going to be a lot easier if there's real property involved. There's a rule of thumb that if about 51% or more of the value of the sale is in real estate, it is much easier for a bank or a lot of traditional lenders to fund. Now, there are SBA 7(a) community advantage loans out there. I'm working on one right now for a restaurant, which is leasing space. So there's not a lot of hard assets there. But it's not guaranteed. It's still going to be more difficult if you don't have the real estate there, unless you have a lot of hard assets, as in machinery, inventory, things like that. But the less hard assets you have, the more likely it is that you're going to be winding up financing at least part of the sale, which is, as we all know, risky. I think one of the main things that I hear from my clients is, well, I don't want to fund this part of the sale because, what happens if the other person fails? And the answer is, well, that's why you want to make sure that the other person succeeds, because it is pretty much a fact of life that you're probably going to be doing some of the funding. So if you wait down the line, or actually anytime you start working on this, it is going to be a big undertaking to plan that exit. The earlier in the process that you do it, I contend the easier it's going to be down the line. But think about this, because this is the really critical part of this, is if you're planning for a sale, you're actually also a lot likely to make more money now, because you're going to be using principles and practices that are going to help grow the company, have people there to back you up, and have the people there to take on the responsibilities. No one only has so much bandwidth, and there have to be other people to help out if you're going to grow and successfully sell a company. So, first of all, if you're planning for a sale, if you're looking particularly at the financial components of this and the structure, it's going to make businesses more likely to sell. I'd like to say that 100% of businesses sell. it's typically more like 30%, but the more prepared the owner is for sale, the more likely it is it's going to happen. The other thing is that liquidation provides the lowest possible return on investment. Liquidation is when, for whatever reason, you decide that you've got to close the business down tomorrow. And you have assets that you can sell. They're going to be sold quickly. There's going to be, no glide path in. It's going to be, a straight fall out of the sky. And it is the least profitable way of handling this. This is part of the reason why, those key person insurance policies are critical as well, because if something happens that, impacts the business and would typically cause it to need to make some rapid adjustments, you've got a little bit of cushion to work on. Which gets down to, of course, that you're ready to sell if the unexpected happens. Again, I talk to way too many people who say, oh, well, I'm not ready to retire yet. I'm sure I got 5 good years in me. And then they discover that, they need to relocate to take care of their parents, or there's a divorce and they need to liquidate in order to complete the divorce process, or a partner leaves and they just don't have, or a partner wants to leave and they don't have the money to buy them out. You want to be prepared for selling if the unexpected happens, and doing good business practices is going to be one of the things that is going to save you at that point. Like I said, the logic is the numbers. No matter how emotional a person is about a business, there is a very strong possibility that they're going to have some financial advisor out there that's going to be putting the brakes on if they don't see the money there. These are some of the tools that you can use to be prepared for that sale. If you have inventory or bad debts, you want to keep them clean. You don't want to have all that stuff pile out. You want to have 3 full years of financial records and tax returns, and you want them sooner rather than later. I have a lot of clients who, want to file in October instead of in April. But if you're trying to sell a business and you don't really have information on how last year closed out until October of the next year, you're going to lose out on a lot of opportunities along the way. Watch for numbers that are out of line. I had one client that was not relieving inventory. I'm not going to get into the technicalities of it, but essentially there was so much inventory sitting around waiting to be used that it was really getting a lot of other numbers out of alignment, and we lost a lot of valuable time during the sales process just getting those numbers in place to truly reflect what was happening in the business. Also think carefully about off-the-books businesses. There are a lot of businesses out there that have a cash component, and if you are making the short-term decision to not declare that income, it's going to be very difficult to claim the value down the road. So as I say, there's value today in doing these practices because you've got a better understanding of what's really happening in your company. And those books are your best friend. Trust me on that. It's amazing what well-kept books can tell you about things to change or improve on. And they aren't just numbers sitting there. You're going to have better decision-making capabilities, and you're going to have consistent financial records. You also have the ability to look ahead to minimize tax liability and maximize profits. And that is, believe me, not always by driving your income taxes to zero every year. It is, if you want to get a loan to expand your business or to buy property or some other component, if you don't have tax returns that demonstrate that you have the cash flow to cover that financing, you're going to wind up in secondary markets where the interest is going to be a lot more expensive. So anyhow, this is the essence of the talk. For those of you who are out there creating a business or running a business, I congratulate you and wish you every success. My main business is helping to sell and buy businesses and the real estate that is associated with them. But I'm always happy to sit down and talk to somebody, and I can do some projections to help you out to figure out some of the steps that you need to take next. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. I know that down the line, there's going to be time for questions, and thank you for taking the time to listen.
Awesome. Yeah, the good old snaps and claps here. Retool, Activate New Mexico. Barbara, thank you so much. That was a lot of wisdom packed in about 20 minutes by my clock. So actually, while it's very fresh, if anybody had questions, go ahead and tap it in the chat or request to unmute if it's nuanced. I don't want any book style questions or anything like that. But while you're doing that, I had a couple to hit you up with, Barbara. So on the real estate side, it was a while before I realized how real estate could factor pretty much into any business as a way to bolster the financial picture. Many firms who are not in any way in the real estate business could easily just lease buildings, nonetheless have purchased so that they would have an asset to add to the collection. It's just smart financial decision making. Are there any downsides for, we have a lot of software enabled businesses here who don't even need an office or don't, especially with COVID and the disruption in commercial real estate, more and more moving away from, kind of long-term offices anyway. Are there downsides to picking up real estate within your business's portfolio? Or on the whole, do you still believe it's a good thing for businesses to consider, especially those that have otherwise not a lot of hard assets?
I think that each situation is its own situation, and I know that's not much of an answer, but there are a lot of businesses right now that I'm working with, for example, who are having a hard time finding a place to rent for the kind of business that they want to do. Now, you're talking about software, and I'll hit on that in just a second, but there are a lot of businesses that require some kind of physical presence, maybe not to house everybody all the time, but it needs to be there. In a market like this can be a disaster. People can't grow. They can't locate in a new community because they can't find property to do it with. So there is a certain wisdom if you've got a business that has some dependency on location, that you strongly consider that. I had a client recently who was in the salon studio business, and some of you might know about this. It's a new style of setting up the hair salons and nail salons and things like that. There used to be booth rentals where everybody would sit in an open room and they'd rent open space. Now what they're doing is renting lockable units, which belongs specifically to the person that's renting them. And there was a make versus buy decision there, and it really had a lot to do. The discussions that we had were, how long are you going to do it? How guaranteed is your cash flow? Do you feel that you will have the time to sell down the road if you want to sell? Because owning real estate, you have to be able to sell it, and not every market is accommodating to, gee, I need to sell this by, a month from now. So it's a strategic decision that needs to be discussed with your advisors. Often it's beneficial. Sometimes it's really, really a bad idea, particularly if you're growing quickly. It could be a boat anchor. So Unfortunately, it depends, but you need to be aware of the benefits of owning real estate and factor them into your decisions.
Let's say quick follow-up from Brian, and then Matt also had a nice tie-in here. Let's say you do believe there's value in holding a real estate asset. What about some nuanced situations where maybe I own it personally and I own the business? What would you advise where the business rents the property from the owner, which seems like a great way to move money out of the business, but would it be detrimental in giving the business the asset? Is that something maybe once you are prepping the sale, you can work it out then? And the mechanism by which you kind of hold the real estate asset before prepping to sell?
That is a great question. Kudos to you for thinking of it. Most businesses do not hold real estate under the name of the business. It's set up as a separate operation, typically an LLC. An LLC is one of the most, as I understand it, I'm not an accountant, but as I understand it, it's one of the most tax beneficial ways of handling it. When I say as a business owner, you should consider seriously real estate, it means as a part of the whole package, but not necessarily incorporated into a business. And as a matter of fact, if a corporation owns business and other things, or the business and the property, it becomes very difficult to avoid double taxation when you want to sell the business. So again, when you want to sell the property. So, again, I have to emphasize that each time it's going to be a strategic decision where you have to take into account the totality of what you're doing. But I will say, be very, very careful before that real property asset becomes incorporated into the business. Yeah. As a separate entity, it's great. If it's incorporated into the business, you really want some good advice before you move forward with that.
Big takeaway for our 25 minutes we have here is think about real estate and the particularities, getting into the weeds, or in this case, the brick and mortar. Get a professional to help you through that so you don't get double taxed and all that good stuff. Barbara, really fantastic content. Everybody get an accountant. And don't forget to get an accountant and pay for it now before you pay for it later. That was just very resounding. And what I loved on the positive side of what you presented is, if you think of these things, you will make your business better, period, because you will run better. And what's that saying? Luck favors those who work hard, or something like that. And that is, even if you have no mindset for selling, you do want it to be a family business. Nevertheless, build it in such a way that, heck, you don't know what winds change if you need to relocate, and some of those scenarios you talked about, Barbara, that you have optionality. I just think that's fantastic. So I think at this point, if we have some time after we hear from Josue, think about your questions for Barbara, that we have her. But I want to introduce you to, again, Josue Olivares, who's the director at South Valley Economic Development Center here in Albuquerque. It's a fantastic facility. It's a fantastic organization. I'm really excited for you, especially if you've never heard of it or don't know much about it, to fill that gap in your mind, because it's an essential piece of the puzzle of solving economic development in Albuquerque and throughout New Mexico. So Josue, welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet everybody. And definitely look forward that we can have this type of events in person back again. So I was asked to share a little bit about the journey as an entrepreneur, and also the work that we do, and what do we do at the center. So I'll start just with a little bit about me. I'm originally was raised in Monterrey, Mexico. So that's the reason of the heavy accent that you hear. And over there, I started several businesses, and the most formal one, because there was different other informal ventures, and the one that I can remember, the earliest one that I can remember, it was when I was in middle school, when for some reason the principal decided that all of us should eat healthy food. I don't know what she was thinking, but we had a little store where you can buy candy and soda, so they basically took that away. So I was there, I think it was on second or third year in middle school, and I catch an opportunity. So I bought big bags of candy, and the next day I was there with a second backpack and selling that to my classmates, and I was doing my little store. And of course, everything got confiscated, and I don't know how it ended up in the teacher's room, and everybody was enjoying that. But moving forward, there were several attempts like that in my early years, but the most formal one was when I created a magazine, and it was a magazine for local businesses back in Monterrey. And I started that venture with my younger brother. I was 13 at that time. He was 12. Probably we didn't even know what we were doing, but we made it. We made the first publication. And one of the things that I've been learning, because I'm going to kind of like, it's just one of the most highlighted ones, is that it doesn't matter that you fail, is that you learn through those failures, right? And as I'm talking to entrepreneurs, and I know that you guys know about what I'm talking about. And so while I'm thinking about this different ventures, there's also there's several lessons, but there's a highlight lesson that I learned in each of those. So in this magazine company, I didn't realize that my graphic designer, which was, I don't know how he trusted me at that age, but I contracted him, but he moved away, and it was very difficult to convince another graphic designer to work for a 13-year-old. and of course, I didn't have any contingency plan, right? So the business went away. I was living with my dad at that time, of course, so it didn't matter because I lost everything. I made a little bit of money, and then everything went away. So the next one, I think it was a few years later, I opened a bookstore, and business was really good. I was selling at that time. You still buy those CD players and the CD and the cassettes and all those things. So everything was really going really great. But then one of the things that I started to do, and that was like 6 months in, I started to spend more than what I should be doing, and I forgot about important lessons about cash flow, right? I needed to consider that I had to have cash flow enough to operate the business correctly. So of course, I end up with very obsolete inventory. Sales started to drop down, and even that they were asking, I didn't have the money, and now the suppliers were saying, well, you have to pay in advance because you're taking longer. And so eventually I had to close down, and they learned cash flows. And then moving a little bit further, we also started, that's also a venture that I started with my younger brother, and we had some kiosk shops at several malls. We had about 9 different, those little shops that you have, that you see on the hallways of the malls. And it was really doing really great. We were kind of like, okay, we're making it. We were 1 year, it was going to be the second year. And then there was in Spanish we would say a movida that the owners of the mall did, that we didn't realize that on the contracts on the little, we didn't know that we had to read contracts at that time. And so when we started reading those contracts, we started observing about how they can move the competition. So they play several of similar businesses around us. So of course, sales dropped. Of course, the lease on those spaces are very expensive. At that time, it was very expensive, and we didn't have any legal way of fighting that. So that's another lesson. Develop a relationship with a lawyer. So we developed it eventually, but it was too late at that time. So then moving to another venture, we started distributing frames for glasses. And I don't know, that was another venture with my younger brother. I don't know how he made the contact, but we were the exclusive distributor for very recognized brands for the entire northeast of New Mexico. So there were several states. It was amazing the business opportunity that we had there. That one, we started buying and selling. It was doing really well until they asked us to do a financial commitment, and it was part of that agreement of have that exclusivity. And at that time, I didn't know that I had to be ready to have access to capital. So when we were kind of like already kind of like running and trying to make those agreements, we were kind of like already missing some of the deadlines that we had already agreed. So making the story short, we couldn't continue that distribution company because of that. And of course, we developed those relationships with banks and other investors, but it was too late at that time. So then another year, at that time, I was already moving to my dad's house because I probably in my mid-20s. So I was moving to my dad's house. Hey, sorry, the company it's bankrupt. Can I use your garage or your space? And he was really supportive. Of course, on the back end, there was conversations about what job are you trying to do instead of just trying to assist business ventures. But I really recognized my dad of having faith in me. So then moving forward, I started another distribution of labels. We were buying and selling labels for different types of manufacturing components. And the lesson there is that as we continue to grow, the expertise that it required about it, I didn't know that there was like 15 different types of glues in just one label and different types of coatings and papers. So it was a very intense industry. So, of course, we were trying to educate ourselves, but also we were at that point, we have employees that we were selling, and we had kind of like a warehouse where we were moving product. And we didn't really had a really good staffing structure, that we had a lot of turnover. So as we were training these individuals and then they were leaving, it was just a constant flow that we couldn't sustain. So we were presented with another opportunity to start a manufacturing company, but in a similar area, but instead of labels, it was on corrugated boxes. So we started manufacturing corrugated boxes, and that I would say that that's the only successful venture that I can share, to be honest with everyone. And that just exploded. We started exporting to all Latin America, to part of the Texas. I think that the farthest that we sent some boxes, it was to Russia for some automobile components. So at that point, we were growing quite significantly. And we also started to have more partners because we needed a little bit more of cash infused. I also learned a little bit more about doing forecasting with a little bit more conversations with key customers, because I made some financial decisions. And what just Barbara said, really get a good accountant. That was one of the biggest lessons when I was reading my financials. I thought that I already knew about it, but I was forgetting that the pro formas had a huge impact on how I make decisions today that will impact in a couple of years later. So to make the story short, one of the big lessons there is that I knew that that when we brought partners, we needed to talk about what was our vision of the business. That particular business at that time, and again, with my younger brother, we were working on that. We were kind of like this dynamic duo. And so we were working in several youth groups and around our city, and there was a very challenging neighborhood where we were helping over there to give some mentorship. And also what we discovered is that they didn't have job opportunities. And I thought it was more about training them about getting an interview, getting there with a tie and be very presentable, having a resume. So they returned and say like, no, they don't want to interview me. And it was like, well, it's an entry position. What's going on? And then I went and started going over there with them, and I tried to be in the interviews. They didn't even open the door, just because of that. Unfortunately, because that's the part where they have this mentality: you're from this neighborhood, you're not going to get access to it. So making the story short, we opened that business to allow those kids to get some job training and have some job experience, and then connect to other job opportunities. So that went really well. So just a transition about what we would do in SVEDC. When I decided to move to Albuquerque, what brought me over here was this, what you see here, my heart. my wife was born and raised here. I met her over in Monterey, so I follow her here. And so when I decided to transition over here, one of the things that I didn't realize is that I didn't start the business with the end in mind. And that's a crucial component that took me a year to being able to delegate my functions and train the individuals. But also that's where I noticed that the visions that we thought that we had aligned, it was not as aligned as possible. So it was one of the huge lessons that I learned, that when I start a business, or when an entrepreneur should start a business, thinking on what is success for me and how is defined for me and how do I see that at the end. And Barbara shared a really cool picture on the with a sea view and everything. I can picture myself also there. What is the definition of success for you, right? In your entrepreneurship mindset. So when I came over here, I had an opportunity to take a couple of months off because my original plans was to start another company over here. And I took a little bit of a sabbatical to understand what was the stage of the business. So I developed my life vision, which is to be, to build, to give, and it's in Spanish, ser para construir y dar. And that basically put me into a connection with a friend from the Small Business Development Centers with CNM. And she shared about an opportunity working here at this center, which is the South Valley Economic Development Center. And she shared about what you just shared with me. You can do that, but helping individuals launch their business instead of just providing a well-paid job. So I said, well, okay, perfect. I would like to do that. Just a little bit. I haven't had a lot of job experience. I've been always an entrepreneur, so I don't know how that's going to work. And also a nonprofit. So just moving a little bit about sharing who we are. I'm gonna just share with all of you a little bit of how are we structured in our organization. So our organization, the Rio Grande Community Development Corporation, what we do is that, I'm gonna jump over here. What we do is that we provide tools, resources, and connections so people can achieve their dreams. That's as simple as we can put it. We have two main divisions of our work. One is we focus on economic development and also nonprofit capacity support. And on the economic development, we have several projects, and we have the center which I'm going to focus today. And also on the nonprofit capacity support, we work in collaboration with over 30 organizations across the state to help them their visions go farther and faster. So I'm going to stop sharing because I just want to focus on SVEDC. And at the center, what we do is we focus on the viability, on the launching, and the first 5 years in business. And that's where we connect with other companies. So at the center, we are located in the South Valley Economic Development Center. It's close to the intersection of Bridge and Isleta. It's 17,000 square foot where we have 22 offices for incubating businesses. We also have co-working spaces. We have access to different resources such as shared classrooms, shared conference rooms, also private offices, also a copy center, and we provide some front desk receptionist services for everybody incubated here. And also one of the only industry that we deep dive, and we have some experts that can provide that coaching and mentorship, is in the food industry. So we have a 4,500 square foot commercial kitchen that is divided in several sections. One is for aggregation. I saw that there's a food hub, a venture on the chat. So we have kind of like that processing in that area. We have a food hub operation. We have for bakers, caterers, also wet co-packaging and the manufacturing of jarring the salsas and jams and also some spices. So that's the only industry that we focus as an organization. But we do support several other companies. We have accountants, we have consultants, we have construction companies being incubated here. And in that, we just provide some of mentorship on the general business management. So as I mentioned, that's what we do. One of the biggest challenges is that we pilot a new program back in 2017 where we basically disrupt the way that we were doing incubation, because one of the things as some of the incubators that we have usually have a selection committee, and we understand that we needed to support some of those entrepreneurs to validate first if it was viable. And also, once they validate that if it was a viable model, launch it properly with the proper licenses, the proper connections to accountants, lawyers, and the proper structure. So they are more successful once they go to the incubation. And when we did that, we didn't do any marketing. We were expecting to have about 10 people participating in the pilot program and refine the process. So just to make the story short, we had 350 increase, and we capped it at 85. And we said, okay, we need to reimagine this. This is crazy. So with the support of really great partners that have provided expertise, and we're really grateful for CNM and Activate New Mexico and all the different partners that we have out there that have provided that expertise to most of our clients. We've been able to provide services to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and over the last 3 years in the services. So what we're working right now, and we're hoping to launch well, it was expected to be launched in this quarter, but the pandemic pushed us to launch it for next year. But what we're gonna do, we're reimagining, we're expanding cold storage capacity, we're expanding spaces, we're also creating and revisiting our curriculum, bringing more experts and more connections in how we provide services and how we guide clients in the process, because we're trying to duplicate our capacity at this point in the services that we provide. So that's in a nutshell what we do, and that's also in a nutshell a little bit of my road on this crazy entrepreneurship life. So I know that ups and downs of entrepreneur, it's something that I really love and really embrace. I was sharing with some friends that right now at this point, all these ups and downs is something that we embrace, and of course we know that it's challenging, but we embrace because that's what makes us stronger. So I'll stop right there. Thank you.
I actually really enjoyed hearing all those stories, getting to know some I hadn't heard before. Thank you for taking the time to do that. We are the culmination of all of our learnings, right? And we have a lot to offer through those. Thank you so much for attending today, everybody. Again, thank you to Barbara. Thank you to Josue, giving of your time. I know it's precious, but as you can tell, they are very approachable people. And in this age where it's hard to connect, I hope that you find a new connection here. And we will see you back here in December, where we're going to continue in this vein of buying and selling businesses, and starting with that end in mind, as Josue was just saying, so that you make your business better today. We're going to have some more stories to share from a local entrepreneur and a local investor who have gone through it recently. So it's going to be a good session. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, and let's go build some great businesses. And thanks to Dan for putting this on. Appreciate you all. Have a great